I would like to call the annual congregation meeting of 2021 to order. Welcome. I'll turn it over to Pastor.
Enliven in us, Holy Spirit. We have a great care for this wonderful city and the kids and the families and the elders who have gotten us to this point. Now may you breathe us within us anew. We're already seeing glimpses of it as we take care of this wonderful building. And we move forward as the church. And yes, a challenging time, but also an opportune one as we lead all people, all ages, to a lifelong faith. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.
By my quick count, we do have a forum, so this is actually a legal meeting. Now, most of what we're going to do today is talk business, and I know that's not what we like to do, and that's why we only do this once a year. But, without the business, we can't have our spiritual growth, we can't have our enjoyment of our church, of our congregation. So it is important, and I appreciate you coming. A couple things that I just want to mention, and then we'll get to the agenda. And certainly, if anybody has any questions at any time, raise your hand, stand up, do whatever, and we'll try to answer them. But God, I hate this thing. A couple things. One is you're going to hear us talk a lot about change, a lot about assessing where we are, a lot about using best practices, which implies what we're doing now is not the best. Understand the context, and the context is the leadership groups and the congregation before us here today did an excellent job. Darrell Rood and his leadership group, Rich Brisbane and what he did in his leadership group, Becky Swore and her leadership group, put us on the stage that we are today. We are okay. We are not in an emergency situation. We don't have to make drastic changes because they used wisdom to figure out how to use our church, the Sunday school, what have you, to give us the foundation we have today. So we are financially okay. The issue is we can't continue the way we're continuing and continue to be okay. So it's up to us to do what we have to do to continue to grow, to continue to prosper, to continue to provide lifelong faith. The other thing I want to mention is that while 2021 was at best a chaotic year, a year of concern, a year of uncertainty, none of us knew how to do what we needed to do because we were doing it for the first time. And amongst all that, the leadership group, the council, spent enormous amount of time working every month with monthly meetings, sometimes on Saturday, sometimes doing flip chart work. And you see, you thought this wasn't good, you should have saw him the first time he had to write on a flip chart. We had meetings to research the kinds of things that you're going to see today. So there's been a lot of work that Stephanie Shear put in, Marcia, Annette, Rod, Cindy, Becky Anderson, who am I forgetting? Julie LaFond, Dave Prudhomme, Jane Martin, Pastor. That council group spent a lot of time. So what you're going to see today is not something that just came up in the last few weeks or days. It was something that was built over time. Researching what's possible, looking at where we need to go, understanding the direction that we wanted to go in, and setting the stage for where we need to be. Our anticipation is that this is a long-term process. It's not something that we have to do overnight because of the previous groups setting the stage for us. So we're diligent, we're working at what we need to do. We know we can't do it all at once, and so it's a long-term. So what we're going to be asking of you as a congregation is, do you support that concept? Do you support where we're going? Because that's what it takes. It can't be just the council, it has to be the entire group. So with that having said, what we hope to do today is talk about where we think our immediate priorities are, where we think we want to go and where we need to go to be a thriving church that provides lifelong faith that Pastor talks about. With that, you'll see the ministry plans that you'll be able to go over. We're probably not going to go over all of them today, but you'll be able to see them. And certainly talk about the budget, because that supports everything we're doing and your ability to vote for that budget. So that's kind of what the agenda is, unless anybody has anything else. This is the time that you can say, hey, I got something, but I'm used to this. So let's talk a little bit about the priorities. And the reason this is important is as the council did their work and looked at the kinds of things that we think we need to do to improve to become a thriving church. We identified probably a dozen things, maybe 10 things. And as we talked about that, we looked at it's not possible to do all of those at once. As a matter of fact, it's not even practical to do all of them. So we need to focus on the few for 2022 that will make an impact, that will set the stage for where we want to go, and then in future years we'll work the other priorities. So what you see in your packet is the priorities that we have chosen in terms of the most important ones, not that the others aren't important, but the most important ones for us to work on 2022. One of them is membership, and it's not doing a membership drive per se, it's getting ready to start accepting members. What are our practices? What are our procedures? What are our policies? What do we do well? What don't we do well? Because membership is one of the critical things that we need to focus on. And if you, as you know, I mean, we're no different than most other churches. Our membership is declining. In the last 10 years, our membership has declined by about 20% or more. And that can't continue. We have to change that trend. So figuring out our practices and our policies, our procedures, and what we're going to do in terms of accepting new members, finding new members, welcoming new members is critically important, and we need to focus on that. The other one, the second one is engagement. We believe we have a lot of people that really haven't been engaged in our church over these last couple of years. A lot of good reasons, pandemic, health, a lot of things. So if we're going to be thriving, we have to find out what we can do to re-engage those people, to re-engage them in terms of volunteerism, to re-engage them in terms of our church. We need to know, and right now, frankly, we don't know why people are not coming, why people are not being involved, why people are not volunteering. So engagement of our congregation is critical.
And we know nationally that's the trend for the whole church.
Yeah, we're no different than most other, virtually all other churches. Just look at the other Lutheran churches in Duluth. I mean, we're absolutely no different. But we have the opportunity to, because of the situation we're in financially and economically, we have the opportunity to make change and improve ourselves. The third major priority is the one of what we call the digital team. We have done a lot of work fixing the sound system, being able to portray our services online to people who can't come. We're not good yet. Well, that's not quite right. We're pretty good. We're not where we want to be yet. So there's some stuff that we need to do yet to make that viable. But the other part of that is that in this day and age, we as a congregation have to reach out in the multimedia arena, whether it's YouTube or Facebook or our internet, our website. And the question is, how do you do that? And where do you get the resources to do that? So the digital team is going to be focusing on what we need to do for equipment changes, what we need to do for reaching out to the community in terms of the websites and internet, and also who is going to run all this stuff. And so there's some people side of this that we have to figure out. So we have an opportunity, and that digital team will be working on that. Probably the last thing, and also important, is you've heard us talk about long-term success. We have kind of evolved as a council to talking about a thriving church with lifelong faith for everybody. And we have looked at what's the best way to do that. We could probably just do that all by ourselves and use our own ideas, our own time. We, however, think that that's not the best way to go. So we started looking at what do other churches do? What are other examples of success? And we're looking at Lutheran churches predominantly. And that's where the Calvary Network came in. So our belief is that if we can use the best practices of the Calvary Network, which has been successful, and apply it to our church, that's the quickest way to become a thriving church. Now, that's not a silver bullet, because you can't just say they're doing this and we're going to do it. We have to do the work. But the ideas, the counseling, the coaching, the failures that they've had, the successes that they have will all lead us to do things a little bit quicker and hopefully a little bit better. So those really are the 4 priorities for 2022. We selected 4 because we think we're capable of doing that. To be very honest, that gives me a little bit of heartburn, because to find the people to do that, you've all had an opportunity in the newsletter to see something that Rod wrote about who would like to step up to work on one of these short-term committees. Guess how many people stepped up? Any ideas? About as many as the comments you just made. One person said, I may be interested. Well, that's my heartburn, because it takes people to do that. Even though it's a short term, even though it's critically important, we probably won't succeed if we don't do this well. We have one person that is willing to work on that. Now, having said that, the other side of that is I have a tremendous amount of hope. I have a tremendous amount of thinking that this is doable, that we can do it. We have shown that we can do it. There you go. I shut it off. I have a tremendous amount of excitement towards where we can go and what we can do. And you have proven that just in the last couple of years with the building project, with all the various things that we've had. We have a tremendous amount of capability. So the hope is there. The hope that this will take place is there. The anxiety is, will we really do it or not? So it's kind of a mixed bag, but I don't want to be a Debbie Downer. On the other hand, I don't want to be unrealistic as to what we're capable of doing. So those are the priorities. As I mentioned, the idea is to have these teams work on those priorities. We will then put them in the ministry teams to make them happen, and in the coming years, we'll continue to do more and do other priorities as we make progress. The big one we want to talk a little bit about is the Calvary Network, and I'm sure you have some concerns about that. As we researched, and Pastor did some research in terms of best practices, the Calvary Network came to the forefront for us. And we haven't entered this lightly, this idea of joining the network. So we did quite a bit of experimentation. We had some meetings with the leadership of the Calvary Network. They came here. Pastor and I have had a couple conversations with them over time. We have used some of their methodology to see how it would work with us. Kind of like to experiment with, will it work? And you've seen some of it. You saw some of it in the building project. The pamphlets, the way we went about is that some of those ideas came from the Calvary Network because they have had a lot of that. You're seeing some of it in pastors' sermons, pastors' services, the themes of those services. You see some of that in Sunday school. Of course, you probably don't because you're not there, but the kids see some of that in Sunday school. So we have looked at what they have to offer, and will it fit us, and can we make it work? Our conclusion is that's the quickest and best way to go, and we think it will. There is some commitment on our part. Our belief is that this is not a short-term relationship that we want to have, that we will join the partnership with Calvary, and it is a long-term relationship. However, we basically said we're not willing to make that long-term commitment yet, so let's make a 2-year commitment. Let's see how we can do this for a couple of years. They can assess us to see whether we're good partners. We can assess them to see whether it'll work. And so we're looking at having a long-term relationship with them, but we're going to have a 2-year window to kind of look at where we go with them. What that means on our part is we need to provide some leadership. In other words, some of our leaders have to be connected to the network, so we benefit from their staff, their experiences, and so that's going to be a commitment of some people. And the other one is there's a financial commitment. We would have a cost of $330 a month for this 2-year period, which is our share of the contribution to that. So while we gain a lot in terms of their staff, contact with their staff, their experiences, their best practices, and you see in your information the list of things that they think they can provide. We probably don't need all of those, but those are the kinds of things that we get. We also have to give something. So my question to you is, do you have any questions about where we're headed with the Calvary Network? Read up on the network, Ken. They have a website. We can get you that information. We have information in your brochure about the kinds of things that they will offer us. I guess that's probably the best place. Is there? Yeah. If you look at that, it's see, there's a whole list of things that they say is their contribution.
So we always set aside funds, and as pastors, we have to go out and find the best practices, or my continuing ed, which is, it can be up to $1,000 to a couple grand to get the best continuing education for rostered people. And you do that through the synod, you do that throughout the country. Well, these friends of mine who lead Calvary Lutheran in Alexandria, they're classmates, Good Shepherd in Moorhead. These are big ELCA congregations that are thriving and that have all the curriculum and programs ready for us. So I get trained as my continuing ed, which we'd have to pay anyways. They provide vacation Bible school, and if you had any experience of that, we didn't have to pay for that. So there are a lot of things that they provide for that $330 a month that I would have to find somewhere else, and they're knocking it out of the park. So, and we've seen that bump because we're experimenting that way. So,
Is the plan to commit to this prior to the time you have enough volunteers? And it's like you go to any consultant, and there's things you gotta do, and you gotta buy into it, you gotta do it. You can't just come here and sprinkle a magic fairy dust and things will change. So is the plan to commit after you've got enough volunteers to buy into the program, to run the program? You know, before we changed our organization, it was essentially one person, as the head of each committee at that time, and then they had to get all their volunteers, and frankly, that's the reason we changed to the point where we are, where we have somebody who's specifically involved with getting volunteers, to get the more volunteers to do a lot of specific jobs, and it just seems like if you don't have the volunteers, they just don't. Well, it's not a cadre of volunteers to implement or become a partner with the network. The volunteers are in our ministry teams. So
What I'm getting at, do you commit and start spending money before you have the people here, or do you wait until
well,
you think you've got a group of people who are buying into it and willing to work it, and then commit?
I'm not sure I know how to answer that, Rich, because these are things we have to do whether we join the network or not. We have to do them. It's not optional. We don't have the option to do nothing. If we do nothing, we are going to die. Now, it might take 4 years. It might take 5 years, but we will not survive if we just keep doing what we're doing. We cannot continue to lose members. We cannot continue to spend more money than we make. We cannot continue to not have volunteers. That's not optional. That's not optional. So whether we join the network or not, we still have to do all that. What the network provides us, and there are no real volunteers to work with the network other than maybe 3 leaders and pastor. What the network provides us is insights of how they've accomplished the same kinds of things we're accomplishing. The successes that they had, the failures that they had, the staff that they have to use for consulting, and then that gives us the ideas to put in place what we need to put in place. And I use the sound system as a perfect example. We had a sound system in our church that barely you were able to speak from the pulpit. You certainly couldn't do it over the internet. Impossible. And you saw, and if you remember, you saw all the things that we did and all the failures we had. We started to go on the network and it dropped. We couldn't have the sound, didn't have the picture. So we had to rewire stuff, we had to change stuff, and we had to change our soundboard. Pretty simple thing. Which one do you buy? What's the best one for our needs? How many options are there? What's the most reliable one? What one have other churches used? Well, guess what? The Calvary Network, the Calvary Church have been through all of that. And their expertise, talking with Joe and others, gave us the idea of here's the one that we should get. Here's the most economical one, the quickest one to put in place, the easiest one to work, and it's been pretty successful. So that's a small example of what Calvary Network, by us being a member, will do for us. Now, that didn't add to any volunteers. We used the people that we had, and that's what's going to have to happen. So there's really not a cadre of volunteers that we need to have for the network. There's a cadre of volunteers we need to have to make things happen, for sure. Becky? We will be the second to join. So this is very new. That's why we did the research in terms of understanding what they have for us and how we can apply it. They anticipate that over time they would have maybe 20 churches in the network. They anticipate that over these next year or so, they may have 5. Rod?
Maybe you and Noah could talk a little bit about how the Calvary Network and what they are doing came about. Because to me, that's instructive. Because one thing I kind of remember is 8, 10 years ago, they were absolutely struggling. And it took them a number of years, and then a grant that they received to come to the point where the Calvary Network has been established, not only to help them, but to help other congregations.
Well, the Calvary Lutheran Church of Alexandria is exactly what you're talking about. You know, a while back, I don't know whether it was 8 years or 10 years or whatever, they were in serious difficulty. And they pulled themselves out of that, changing pastors, changing youth directors, et cetera, et cetera. And in that process, they went through all the things we're going through, but they did it on their own. And the concept of the network came as a result of Calvary basically saying, we think we can provide something for other congregations. And they petitioned to the Lilly Foundation. Eli Lilly made millions, and they formed this foundation. And what they're doing is providing monies to churches, congregations, groups that are willing to share their experiences to grow faith in America. They've, so far, the Lilly Foundation has given 92 grants. Some of the grants were the ELCA Synod in Minneapolis, the ELCA Church in Chicago, seminaries, Augsburg, St. Olaf, St. John's, I think, a lot of colleges. Well, the Calvary Church applied for a grant with the sole purpose of doing what they're doing with us, sharing their experiences with other churches in the Minnesota, North Dakota area to grow those churches. And so the network came as a result of that grant money. Other questions?
Calvary Network also is a non-denominational organization. I mean, they will help not only Lutherans,
Birthed out of the ELCA, but they'll help. Birthed out of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, but they will help any struggling congregation find its footing.
all when they were organizing their church down in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, were recipients of the Lilly Foundation, pastor education, this type of stuff, and they paid for things like their hotel rooms, their food, and that, educational,
Yeah. And if you're absolutely right, Stephen. If you look at the Eli Lilly Thriving Initiative, you'll find Catholic churches, you'll find Baptist churches, you'll find Methodist. So Eli Lilly's foundation is basically to support Christianity to those that are struggling.
Lifelong faith for the next generation. Yeah. Lifelong faith for the next generation in this church and beyond. Yeah, with a capital C.
Well, like I said, our anticipation is that this will be a lasting relationship that we have with them. We are signing up, if you will, for a 2-year commitment. We will see how it works during this 2 years. At the end of that time, we will evaluate whether it's worth it for us to continue or not. Rich?
Just a comment. I guess I'm convinced that you guys have done your due diligence and everything on this. And if you look just at the numbers, you know, that you have in the proposed budget here, roughly $7,000. And so for 2 years, that's 14,000 roughly. If we did nothing with the reserves we got built up, you know, we'd get to the cliff and nothing changed, we'd get to the cliff in so many years and months. If we did this and nothing happened, you know, we'd get there like a month earlier. So it's, when you look at the amount of money compared to our budget, it's not a big, it's a lot of money, but it's not a big item in our total budget. So in my mind, I think it makes sense to do it.
And you're absolutely right, Rich. You know, if we do nothing, we'll get to the cliff. If we're not successful at our priorities and the things that we need to change, we'll get to the cliff, whether we're joining the Calvary Network or not. I mean, there's no question about it. The key for me, though, and you're absolutely right about the finances. When you look at it in the long term, you know, $7,000 in a $266,000 budget is important, but not going to break the bank. The key is, are you willing to support this? Is the congregation willing to support our initiative going into the Calvary Network? That's the key, because it can't get done by just the council. It can't get done just by Pastor Noah calling Pastor Hans. It's got to be the support of the congregation. And as we stand today, you're representing the congregation. So I ask you, do you support this? Raise your hand if you support it. We're back in classrooms. Raise your hand. Because that's what we need. Thank you. That's what we need. I don't need a motion unless you need one. I'm not interested in a vote. I don't need a vote for this. And the reason I don't need a vote is because my interpretation of a vote is, yes, let's do it. You go ahead and do it. That's not what I'm interested in. I'm interested in, do we support this as a congregation? And what I hear is we do. Now, we'll vote on the budget because it's in the Constitution. We have to vote on the budget. So, and it's in the budget. The money's in the budget, so we'll vote on that for sure. But for this is so important in our survival that I'm more interested in support. And our council is more interested in support.
One of the things that
So they want to hear you
There.
online. That's the cool thing about the future of the church. There are a lot of people that are tuned in.
Scott, one of my perspectives is in what you're saying is that we all need to understand there needs to be change. And that takes my and each person here saying, okay, there's going to be some things that are going to change, and I've got to help. I've got to accept. I can't resist. You know, Cindy will tell you, boy, I work outside the box a lot. No, she doesn't say that, but
We say that, Rod.
but, you know, I mean, this has been just an interesting dynamic from my perspective for churches for a number of years on what are we going to do? We've got to change, and this is an opportunity with Calvary Network that is providing some ideas and some leadership for us to help us change in ways that at least others have found some success. And it's what Rich said and others that, geez, if we don't figure out how to change, that cliff is coming. And so I think, to me, one of the important parts is that we as a congregation need to accept the fact that there will be the need for doing some things different.
My dad told me a long time ago that when you get the answer you want, stop talking. I got the answer I want, I'm done. Marcia, you want to go over the budget with us?
Good morning. Thank you for your vote of confidence. We are all excited. Council, pastor, officers, we are very excited for the changes that will be taking place. And it will be good for everyone. You've got the budgets, so let's look at the numbers. I'll start with income. How we determine income is we take the 10 months received so far this year and prorate it. However, there are fundraising that we did this year that was not in the budget last year. Little Hearts Daycare is thriving, and we know we can depend on them. Our pledges for this year, as of yesterday, we had 90 pledges for $126,000. You know, during the year, we had our building project pledges for $119,000. So unless you want me to read all these numbers that you have in front of you, you can see that the total income is $215,193. As far as the budget, I will reiterate Calvary Partner Network. That's new on the budget this year. So we've talked about the almost $7,000. You have all the ministry team budgets. They did a great job this year. We asked them to think outside the box. Think about where we're going. Think about what you want your team to do. And they did a great job. We also, as officers, decided a 5% increase in salary was necessary this year due to inflation. We have good employees, good service people, musicians, we just thought it was fair. As you can see, total expenses, $266,147, which is a deficit of $50,954. Before I talk about that, I'm going to explain last year's deficit of $35,000. We're not going to have that this year. We have made money this year. We have not had to dip into our checking account. And as of November, we have $124,000 of operating income in the checking account. So even if we have to use half of the deficit, we're still in good shape. Any questions? Or concerns?
Where did the extra money come from the budget?
A little more giving this year and a little less expenses. And of course, the fundraiser that we had and we hope to have again.
If you look at, the difference of 35,000 to breaking even, about half of that came from salaries. If you remember what happened this year, there were times where the ministry team didn't work. There was times where the youth director didn't work. No choir director. So half of that came from salaries. The other half came from an expense side, came from just the ministry teams. There's some teams that spent very little money that was budgeted. On the income side, $6,800 from the meatball dinner, daycare, another, $7,000. So our income was up. The giving of the congregation was phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. Because you think of what we went through. You know, we went through, you know, bad stuff. and people had a lot on their mind, had a lot of stress, and yet they chose to give what they said they would give. And that's a bright spot. That's a bright spot for us going forward. So part of it was on the income side, Ken. The other part was on the saving expense side. We can't expect to have that on an every year basis. I mean, we don't want to not have singing. We don't want to not have youth, you know, so when we go to our full budget, we're going to not save on those salaries. And the other part that you need to think about is, and the council is, and I'm stealing time from her, but the council basically looked at how do we do what we need to do. And if you look at just the monetary side, 65% of our budget is salaries. There's another 15, 16% that's non-discretionary spending. Fuel or utilities, electricity, insurance, fuel. Those are things you don't have discretion over. So when you look at salaries, you look at non-discretionary spending, it doesn't leave you a lot left to shave your expenses. And as I mentioned, the previous previous leadership groups have done an excellent job of not overstretching ourselves. So we can't save our way into prosperity. We can do better, for sure, but it's not going to be enough to save our way.
Thank you, Scott. I want to make one quick comment, and this has been said before, but this has to be said again. We went through 2 hard years, challenging years, and our faith leader, pastor, our congregation leader, Scott, brought us through the past 2 years very successfully. We're able to open our church, have services. Financially, we're in good shape. Some churches aren't. Some churches are really having a difficult time. So we are very blessed with our leadership. Is it time to vote, or are there any other questions? Yes.
Two-part question. Is there anything that the church can do with the daycare to keep them here? And do we have not a long-term contract, but where they could just walk out the door? You know, because I know that is a big income into our church.
A contract is basically, they give us 30-day notice, we give them 30 days notice, something like that. Talking with Jeff and Melissa, they have no intention to walk. Now, life happens, so we have to be prepared that we need to grow to make up for that and not be on the hook for if that does happen. And that's part of where the previous leadership groups did an outstanding job of saying, how can we support our congregation from a financial standpoint? We have this facility, let's use it other than just Sundays. And Rich and Becky and Daryl, went through that thinking. And that, I don't want to say it's brilliant, because I don't know that Rich is brilliant, but wow. It was out of the box thinking when that took place, and thank goodness it happened. So we're pretty confident that they have no intention of leaving. We can't predict the future.
Is there anything that we can do to help out a remodel? Like maybe, I know we talked about the kitchen.
Well, they're not even going to use the kitchen. Their anticipation is, and in the new place that they're at, they need that to grow. And so by them going there to grow will help us even stay here longer, basically, because they probably couldn't survive if they just had the kids at Holy Cross. So they need the kids at both schools. They have a restaurant quality kitchen at where they're at. They're going to prepare everything there and move it here. So there's probably not much that we can do if they decide to move. What we can do is grow. Everything we have to do is grow. And we don't have to become a church of 800 members. We need to grow a little bit, but we need to start growing. That's the answer. Any other questions?
Yeah, what is our membership numbers right now?
Depends on what list you want to look at. We think it's about 160, 165. And now we're talking about families now, not individual members. Talk about families. 10 years ago, go back to some of the old reports, it's probably 210, 220. So in 10 years, well, we've lost. So we don't need to grow exponentially. We need to start the process of growing. I would entertain a motion to accept the budget as proposed. Becky, you make the motion. How about a second? You all have your ballots? Do you need a pencil? Pencils in the pews. My ballot?
While they're counting ballots, I wanted to show you our new envelopes, which are out in the narthex, alphabetized. Please take your envelopes. Then we don't have to mail them. Okay, this year we have a new category. Rather than building debt, right here in the corner, it is called building project. So anyone that pledged for the building project, you can put your amount there along with your current giving. You can even write one check if you'd like. Also, for those that didn't pledge, if you would like to contribute to the building project, this is where you put the monies. That's all I have.
As we wait for the vote, just a comment. Talking about the business stuff is kind of a downer, and I know it has to happen. That's why we do it once a year. But from my perspective, what has happened here in the last several months of the services, the friendship, the faith experience is phenomenal, That gives us hope. That gives us excitement. That gives us our ability to grow, and we know we can do it. We know we will be here. As I've told people, I want to die in this church. Now, not literally here, but I want to die in this church. I don't want to have to join another church. And we have the excitement that it will happen here. It will happen here. Now, having said that, we're looking for volunteers to be on the council. No, I'm just joking, but seriously, it's a tremendous, as Marcia said, a tremendous amount of excitement, a tremendous amount of positiveness, a tremendous amount of we will be able to do this. And regardless of what the vote is for the budget, I would like you, when you leave, to think about that and what this church means to all of us. And thank you. Thank you. I guess this is what you call dead time.
Well, a preacher will always stand up during quiet time to speak. We did line up some of my colleagues through the network coming in the new year, and depending on the way that you would support. And so Pastor Hansdahl, you'll see more and more information, but he is going to be visiting us in January, and he'll come and preach. You'll all get to meet him. And he texted this morning. He said, "Hi, Scott and Noah. Wanted to know that Calvary, your brothers and sisters at Calvary, we're praying for Holy Cross this morning. Good luck and blessings as you prepare for 2022. So I wanted to share that with you. And of course, did you get them? Okay. 46 yeses and 1 nay. The budget passes.
Without any other comments, I would entertain a motion to adjourn the 2021 annual meeting. Rich moves, second. Cindy? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Where was that no vote? Thank you. Appreciate your time.